and up he went about 35 feet, came back down with the cat. Harley Carnes, CBS News.
The following is a paid program and does not necessarily reflect the opinions of the staff or management of Visionary-related entertainment.
Aloha and welcome to Maui Nonprofit Notes, where each week you will find us talking story with Maui's nonprofit executive directors and staff to find out how they're working to support those with needs within our community. Maui Nonprofit Notes is generously sponsored by Pacific Source. If you're building or remodeling a home, please stop by Pacific Source's Cabinet and Appliance Showroom, located in the Waikapu Bayshard. I'm Susie Tiemann, Executive Director of Lokahi Pacific, and your host for Maui Nonprofit Notes. For those of you who may be listening for the first time to this weekly show, during this hour we share some of the experiences of our nonprofit agencies and just how they're changing lives, changing communities, and creating miracles of hope for those with needs. We're going to start off today's show by talking to a couple of folks from Maui Mediation Services. We've got Bhavon Bowers, who is the Executive Director, and we've got Diane Petropoulos, who is Trainer Extraordinaire. Is that your title?
Thank you, Susie.
It is.
Not it should be.
I'm
Yes.
happy to have the title.
I see. It is today, anyway. Okay, so Maui Mediation Services. Let's give a little overview to those who maybe haven't heard about you.
Well, we've been in existence for 34 years. We are a community-based mediation agency, one of 5 in the state. And what we do is bring people together that have differences. They have disputes. We offer an alternative. Not going to some place where a third party says, I'll listen to your side, and I'll give a decision. We bring the parties together to actually discuss what's going on and how did it get to this point, and how are you seeing things from both perspectives, or all perspectives if there's more than 2 parties, letting them not only listen but feel heard, sometimes for the first time. After you lay that foundation, a lot of times they're able to see each other in a different light and see the possibilities for how they can work through things in a totally different manner.
What brought you to this point? It was interesting when you said 2 or more, because we always think of disputes as being between 2 people.
Sometimes.
Neighbors, 2
Exactly.
people, whatever. But it could be a group of people.
It can definitely be a group of people, and the more people, the more vantage points, the more personalities, all of that plays a role in how you move through the muck that they think is there towards something that will actually be a solution, something that's workable.
The muck may be just a thin layer.
Usually it is. Or
Yeah.
it can be many thin layers.
Oh, okay.
And to have them identified, again, opens up the whole visual for the parties.
Bring out that Windex and just wipe each slate clean.
Each one.
Yeah? Bring those pieces together. Diane's chuckling. Is it that simple?
If we don't show regard for the folks, it might look simple, but in fact it's very complex, and that's what mediators do. We ask a lot of questions so they have a chance to explain it. And then, whether it seems like a small thing or not, it is a big thing to them, and
Right.
that's where the respect comes in.
Right. That's important because, they wouldn't be in front of you if they could fix it themselves.
Exactly.
And they can't fix it themselves because they've gotten to the point where they maybe aren't even talking to each other anymore.
And probably don't even think that it is fixable. A lot of times the parties will come and say, well, I've got the right perspective. It's my way, and they just don't see it. And so kind of bringing them back, taking a breath, and seeing, well, how did we get to that being your perspective? And again, as Diane said, asking the questions that not only gives them an opportunity to talk about where they're coming from, but in that time they get to think about it and hear it in their own heads. And sometimes it's like, maybe that's not as important, or maybe that's not really what I want to say. All of it comes into play.
So maybe just saying it.
Sometimes you get hyped up on having a stance, and sometimes that can be a roadblock.
Gotcha. Interesting. Diane, your insight.
Wow. Well, let me think here. Because what I find is that I learn something from every mediation. I may be a seasoned mediator, but each one, even though it might be a similar issue, such as returning a security deposit, each one is so different because of the individuals involved. The issue might be the security deposit, but their perspective, what they need from the situation. Always something to learn as a mediator.
Interesting. That makes sense. We all come from different perspectives. We all think differently. Before the show, we were talking briefly about what were we talking about? Hello, blank. The idea that one of the things I see that you folks do well, let's go into it. The training of mediators. You've got a big session coming up. Your first of this year.
We're having our basic mediation training. It is scheduled for February 4th and 5th, 11th and 12th. That's the first and second Thursday and Friday at the Cameron Center in the auditorium. And this is a totally comprehensive training. It lays the foundation for those in the community that ultimately would like to be part of our volunteer pool, and that is just a totally rewarding experience in and of itself. But the skills that the participants will receive, and our trainer Diane is sought after throughout the state, and she can tell you about how she prepares each year to bring the participants the most up-to-date, relevant information that they can use immediately. We're not talking about, after you get your certificate and then we put you in. They can take this home that night, and we've had stories where a participant will say, well, I really didn't hear my spouse, my wife, my husband, my child until I actually remember that exercise, or I remember what Diane said in the training, and it opened a whole new spectrum for me. It happens that quickly.
Things got resolved at the supper table.
They can be.
They can be, huh?
If people are listening.
That's right. And that's, to me, that's the key.
Yeah.
We don't listen to each other. And because we don't listen in the true sense of the word, we don't understand what somebody's trying to say.
Happens all the time.
Or we listen to people, but we listen through our own filters.
There you go. We listen
And
with our
filters
background
are
and
the
our...
thing that will distort what we're hearing oftentimes.
That voice is Dean Wong, Executive Director of
That voice.
Mnpd Family Services.
Chiming in.
Yeah, who's going to be the second half of the show. But good point, and he's great about doing this. He jumps in, helps me out, brings out the point. But in this training that you're going to be doing, now, is this a basic training? Somebody who's not had any experience with trying to do this, but maybe has had an interest, and now they've got, good, I can get off that Thursday and Friday and come down and take this training.
Yes, it is for people who have a strong interest but may not have had any experience before. They're most welcome, because I will start at the beginning, and it will start with listening. Of course, we have other skills that we'll ask them to get involved in with exercises along the way, so that when you get to an actual role play, where you have a chance to try to mediate, we've gone through a series of skills with exercises to supplement that, so that you have the chance to actually move through a mediation and resolve it in class.
Wow.
With mentor mediators watching over you, so that if you get stuck, someone can help you move through it.
Interesting. And at the end of this class, you obviously get a certificate, but you also get...
Some skills.
You get the
Lots of
skills
great
immediately,
skills.
but also you have the opportunity to join, as I said, our volunteer pool. And our pool is made up of members that come from all walks of life, all types of experiences, young, old. The career backgrounds are as varied as the people are, but they all find that there is something incredible that they get out of helping a fellow community member. It can be an area that they might have some knowledge in, or some instance that they've never interacted in themselves, but can still facilitate the discussion between the parties by asking the questions. And by coming in totally neutral, you're finding out for the first time and helping them re-examine what their positions are. So it is really an incredible process to be part of. And some sign up just to become better communicators, to become better listeners, better employees, better supervisors, just better people.
How about better parents?
Always.
Yeah, right. I mean, how many times as kids do we say, "You're not listening to me"?
Better parents, and sometimes better adult children, because an area that
go.
we're beginning to focus on is getting involved with families and elder care issues, having conversations that might be kind of difficult, A lot of times we can talk forever about things that are fun to talk about, things we enjoy, but when you're talking about conversations that aren't so easy to come across, aren't so easy to start, then you kind of stifle the things that you really need to talk about.
Right.
And so having a place where those involved don't have an agenda or just trying to draw out what the salient points are is incredible.
Interesting. And so you've got some very seasoned mediators.
We do indeed.
In your pool of volunteers.
We have some that have been with us since the beginning. One particular has been there 33 years.
Oh my gosh.
Indeed.
Wow, that's fabulous. Now, do they have a special area of expertise that...
The particular mediator that I'm talking about has done a wide variety of cases, but is skilled in both our domestics and our non-domestics. So I wouldn't say a particular area.
Gotcha. Interesting.
It sounds like this initial training that you're talking about coming up is sort of, you said, the beginning or beginner training. I guess the training continues on and you have more opportunities for volunteers once they've gone through certain levels of training and have participated with you.
Definitely. After the training, we have the apprenticeship where they actually get to or observe seasoned mediators, and then they are teamed with someone with much more experience. So any questions, any tough spots and it can be a little intimidating when you're first getting in because it is so very important to the participants, but you have the foundation. The role plays that are done in the training are very realistic. Diane can tell you about some instances where I was not accused, but I was told that I was a very realistic participant. And so if you give them the opportunity to really get a feel of what it can be like and yet have it in a supportive and nurturing place where mediators can say, okay, how about if you'd have done it this way that time? And answer the questions on the spot, that increases not only the skill level, but the confidence of our participants and who we're training.
I can see Diana just chomping to jump into this situation here.
Well, to your point on additional training, yes, this is a basic. So at the end of it, we expect, as Bhavan said, that folks can become mediators and mediate disputes with a co-mediator, a seasoned co-mediator, almost immediately. But then, of course, there's additional advanced trainings. One of the ones that's coming up, I believe, in May is civil rights training. So if the Hawaii Civil Rights Commission refers a case to our agency, we will have mediators who have been trained specifically in that area. So harassment suits or any of those types of cases that fall under their purview. That's what will be prepared with our group to mediate.
Is that kind of a new thing for you?
No, it's a continuing
It's a growing,
commitment.
but it's a growing thing, though.
Yes.
What are you hearing more of? There was something in here where divorce cases had jumped by.
I think the last time
number.
that we were here, there was a huge spike in the domestic cases, and not just divorces, but cases involving the separation of parents that had children involved. And that pretty much was what we were dealing with the latter half of last year. Towards, I'd say, October, November, we've started going back the other way. A lot of landlord-tenant issues, a lot of other civil issues where the dispute wasn't so much about family, but about outside, a couple of employer-employee issues. So we run the gamut, truly. And right now, it's the whole kitchen sink.
That's unreal. The employee or the workplace, I would think, would be a growing area because of some issues that we're hearing about in some of the organizations around.
Well, the workplace
businesses.
is always a hotbed, I think, for the possibility of disputes and controversy. And our civility in the workplace training, which is something that Diane's very much involved in, we're getting a lot of interest in that from various employers because there's just a lack of communication a lot of times that can turn into disputes that would easily be dealt with and put aside, and the employees are able to be productive in what they're doing. But if they're allowed to fester and not be addressed, it can just spread like wildfire throughout the organization. And so the skills that are able to be taught through the civility in the workplace training, not just to the supervisors, but also to everyone in the workplace, often has them identify how to listen to their colleagues and how to bring up the points that can be heard in the way that they're saying them. A lot of people talk, but am I really hearing what you're trying to communicate to me?
Right.
And if not, then it's just yammering and there's not a lot of movement going on.
So that would be the kind of training where an employer could send 1 or 2 or 3 people from their office or business to this training, and that brings it back into the workplace for everyday use.
Actually, with our civility training, that's something that we pretty much customize. We find out what issues are going on there with the employers.
Oh, okay.
Because it's different in each place. And so after finding out what areas they like to have us touch upon, then again, custom design training, and Diana's just fantabulous about this, getting to the crux of what is it you need to know, what mistakes have been made, and how do we identify them so it's understood and you can see, if the situation comes up again, how it can be redirected.
Right. Very good, very good. We've got to take a short break, and we'll be right back.
Aloha from Pacific Source, and thank you for your support over the years. Pacific Source has offered more of what builders and homeowners value most in building materials and cabinet design. We've done this by offering superior customer service and products, as well as by designing kitchens and baths that are intelligent and elegant while staying true to your vision and budget. Visit our showroom in Waikapu in central Maui, where we display a variety of cabinets as well as top-name appliances like Sub-Zero, Wolf, Viking, KitchenAid, and more. We display countertops, tile and wood flooring, and several brands of windows and doors, including Fleetwood multi-slides and La Cantina folding doors. Come in and talk to our designers about making your dreams become a reality. From concept to completion, we really believe our attention to detail and superior service are what sets us apart. Let us show you what we mean. We are a Pacific Source at 515 East Oahe Way in the Consolidated Base Yard in Waikapu, just off Waiko Road. Call us at 986-0380. That's 986-0380, or look us up online at packsource.com.
And we are back. This is Maui Nonprofit Notes, where each week you find us talking story with Maui's nonprofit executive directors and staff to find out what they are up to. And we're talking right now with a couple of folks from Maui Mediation Services, Executive Director Bevan Bowers, and what did I call her? Trainer extraordinaire?
That was the title.
That was it, okay. Diane Petropoulos, and she gets embarrassed when you say that to her.
It's true.
Well, that's what I've heard. I mean, it's not like you came on board yesterday.
Thank you.
So a lot of people have had the advantage of your experience and some of the classes you've taught. I mean, you've come to the Maui nonprofit group a couple of times and done some short studies for us. Mm-hmm. And we all walk out of there thinking, hey, we just picked up some valuable information. We ever going to get a chance to use it? We hope not.
If it's civility in the workplace, only if it's preventative, I'd like you to use it.
There you go. Okay. So I think you've got some more thoughts on the civility in the workplace that we were talking about before the break.
We developed it because any workplace can have challenges. And what we were finding was that if we came in early, if the employer suggested that a training along these lines would be useful to their employees, it actually started to avert some crises that might have gotten to much more formal grievance processes. So in that sense, getting enthused about some of the concepts is exactly what I'm hoping to accomplish, that it permeates the workplace to the point where people aren't, if they disagree, that they're not being disagreeable with each other, that they can actually express themselves, there's respect back and forth, and you use that difference of opinion to reach even better decisions. It actually gives you more options if you maintain the civility while you're wrestling with new concepts. Conflict brings your attention to an area that needs attention. Avoidance is not a strategy.
Gotcha. So it's making it a disagreement without it becoming an argument.
It can be constructive disagreement. It can be problem solving without a personal attack on someone that doesn't hold the same opinion that you do.
Interesting. And so often, I mean, the disagreement becomes personal, and that's what we have to take out of it. Take the person out and look at it. Okay?
I agree.
Yeah, good. So now in the training, do you do some of that in this training that's coming up? Do you touch on that?
Just a little bit, but
Okay.
the focus on this training in February for basic mediation is, frankly, to become mediators.
Okay.
Those same principles, mediation and facilitation, are the underlying principles for the civility in the workplace trainings, just applying it in a different context.
Right, gotcha. Facilitation, thinking about that, I know a couple years ago I was on a county-wide committee, and we had a facilitator who came in from Maui Mediation to take care of every meeting we had, to write things on the board and to kind of bring us into some conclusion after each meeting so that we didn't walk out going, well, that was a waste of time. I mean, we did. I mean, honest to goodness, at each meeting I went home thinking, we're getting somewhere, and I guess that, so many times you walk into sessions like that and you think, you look at who the facilitator is and you go, okay, we know where this is going. I mean, it's a foregone conclusion depending on which side they came from or which company they work for or whatever. But the facilitators that come from your place have no hidden agenda.
That's really our commitment, that we come in neutral, that we give everybody a good look at the issues, and then we bring people to consensus as much as possible without inserting our own opinions into the process. Our obligation is to keep things moving, to keep things, people generating ideas,
right?
Not focusing in a particular direction that we think is the way to go.
It was a couple times. It was interesting because there were 3 or 4 people who had obviously worked on issues like this before, and when one would say their comment, you just saw the other 3 light up like they've got to get their 2 cents worth in now because he said that, and it can very quickly stymie the thought process if you start thinking about what they're saying to each other instead of what you're there to discuss.
Well, as soon as you bring in judgment on the ideas instead of just receiving them, okay, we have a couple, who else has a great idea that we want to throw in? If you can keep the opinion out of it at that early stage, then you're right. You don't shut off the creative process, the problem solving. If you're looking at something and right away saying, not going to work, you have exactly stopped the process you're trying to do.
Right. And there were a couple times when people wanted to say that, and a couple times when they did say it. But the facilitator was really good that they kind of turned around that, what do I want to say? It's a positive negative to a maybe. And that opened the door for some other comments. And the next thing I know, we were back on track and going. And that's the kind of place where I'm thinking if the facilitator had their own agenda or an agenda, that could have been the end of the discussion because that's where maybe they wanted it to be.
Your use of the word open is exactly where we need early on in those facilitations to keep things open so that there can be some progress. And that's where reactions to someone's idea, we need to encourage folks to let it roll for a while. As long as you understand it, ask questions if you don't understand it, but let's not decide early on whether it's the right answer or not.
Interesting, very interesting. Now, if I were to have some meeting like this where there's people coming from different walks of life to come into a session, and I feel it's important that it be done exactly right, because we do need to present maybe a report at the end of the 6 months or something study. What kind of money am I looking at to hire a facilitator to come in and do this for us?
Well, in terms of the community, I think there's quite a broad range. In terms of our fees, because we're a nonprofit, that's precisely where we feel not only do we bring neutrality, but we bring reasonable cost to it. So I'm going to turn it over to our ED to quote you.
I knew that was coming.
So unfortunately did I. Yeah. Actually, we do have a set fee structure, but we also take into account if we're dealing with, say, a fellow nonprofit, how much time they're actually talking about. If they're looking at, say, an 8-hour session or 2 4-hour sessions, and there have been some facilitations we've done that have been that long, are they looking to have a recorder there, or are they just looking for the facilitator there? So again, customization does come into play, but we pride ourselves on making sure that all of our services are affordable to the community, and if there's special circumstances, we definitely take that into consideration.
Work with
and
people.
we will work with just about anybody who is saying, hey, we're in need of your help. What can you do for us?
Right. I think one of the things that's always stood out to me about mediation, Maui Mediation Services, is that what an asset it is to the community to have this kind of service available to it, because really what people are spending time and resources doing upfront is preventative, is saving huge costs for individuals and even businesses or companies in the long run. And so it is really a resource to this community that I believe is well supported, but also much needed, because we're really saving the community in the long run a lot of opportunity for early on success.
We pride ourselves on being effective, on being professional, on being confidential, and open to all spectrums of the community. If it is a low-income situation, we've got that covered. But it's not necessarily just for those who cannot access the courts. Right. We're a true alternative to the litigation process, and equally effective. And the bonus is when you have the two co-creating the solution, the chances that both sides stick to it and feel better about it, that's making us feel better in our community, it's greater.
Right. Wonderful. We've got just a couple minutes. Any last comments, Diane, that you'd like to make sure we let our listeners in on?
Well, I'll just mention something that I've added to the basic mediation training as it became much more widespread, essentially in the leadership literature, thinking about what makes successful folks, how do they manage themselves and others. It's referred to as emotional intelligence. You hear it called EQ. And it simply means that you have an understanding of yourself, an awareness, and of course some self-management if you need to. But also the other side of it is your social, the ability to establish rapport with others and maintain those relationships. So there's an awareness on both the self level and the social side. That is an area that's getting a lot of attention across the country in some of the really large corporations. And they're finding that folks that have trained themselves to have both sides of that coin are able to really lead and have their entities prosper. It is there is some it coincides with some successful companies.
Right, it is a piece of the puzzle. That's great, because a lot of I mean, if I'm reading you right, what you're saying is knowing who you are.
Yes.
And how you're being perceived.
Yes. Thank you, Susie. That's excellent.
Maybe I should come take the class.
We'd love to have you.
It's on my bucket list.
Okay.
Anyway, we've got to call an end to this part of the session. But Vivan, anything you want to?
I would just
add?
invite everyone, if there are any questions or if they've got some more information that they need to find out about the training, to give us a call at 244-5744. Our website, mauimediation.org. We'd love to answer any questions, and we're looking forward to a fantastic training with Diane starting February 4th.
Very good. Thank you very much, Diane and Vivan, for being with us today.
Thank you.
Have a great training session, and I know you're going to have a great year, and we're going to have you back on here later in the year. Or if something comes up that something breakthrough, something that we could all learn from, come back and share it with us.
We're looking forward to many great things. Thank you, Susie.
Thank you so much.
Susie.
Okay.
Thank you.
Dean, guess what? Now it's your turn to talk.
Awesome. Awesome sauce.
Oh, shoot. You know, you guys, speaking of bucket list,
Yes.
you know, Camp Imua is on my bucket list.
Is it?
Yes.
Well, we would love to have you come up and experience
'Cause
Camp Imua.
Every year when we talk about Camp Imua, I say, what day's the helicopter ride?
Yeah.
And every year it comes and goes.
Yeah.
And I don't get a helicopter ride.
I'm going to remember that this year. I want some Instagram footage of that.
Ooh, wow. So today we're going to talk, you're going to talk a little bit about signing up for camp.
Absolutely. Not just for our campers who are, and we should preface about what is Camp Imua. We don't want to
There you go.
assume that everyone out there knows about Camp Imua, although I do want to say that one of the things we're celebrating here in 2016 is that this is the 40th anniversary of Camp Imua. And in its 40 years, Camp Imua has although there have been a lot of changes to the way we structure the camp and influence the camp, it really is meeting the same very basic need. It is a 1-week overnight recreational camp experience for children who have special needs in our community. And many, many people in 40 years have come and volunteered and committed their time throughout the week of service to those beautiful children and made sure that they have had an incredible week-long experience. The idea of Camp Emu is to give these children who have such special qualities and special needs the ability to experience camp like any other typical child experiences camp. So Camp Emu is not about therapy. It's not about special skills training or anything like that. We keep it completely 100% recreational. It's dances, it's movie nights, it's arts and crafts, it's helicopter rides, as you said, and zip lining and surfing and water activities and arts and crafts and marshmallow roasting and making s'mores and making friends that will last you your entire life. And for many of these children who come together and get this camp experience, these are the things that they don't get to experience in their typical year, in their typical life. A lot of people have limitations that are placed on children with special needs and think because they are a person with this special need, they can't do this, or they can't enjoy that activity, or they can't appreciate this kind of activity. And Camp Emu is all about giving these children all of those experiences and making it possible that they can do these things in a way that is safe and healthy for them, and it boosts their who they are and their image of who they are, and the friends that they make at camp means so much to them.
I also saw on the schedule talent shows, jam sessions.
Yeah, I mean, exactly all those things. And here's the thing, the talent show, I have to say, is one of the most special activities. And it happens about midweek at camp, and it happens at the facility in the evening. And right from the start of camp, the kids are made aware that the talent show is coming up, and they get to think about it. And what happens, of course, is the way this is the structure of Camp Emu. You have our, say, 60-plus children who are our special needs campers that are registered for Camp Emu. And then there are about 175 to 200 volunteers that actually make camp happen. The volunteers are broken down into teams of 2 and 3 individuals that become caregivers. And then each team of caregiving team is assigned an individual camper that they have for the entire week for the process of camp. They get to learn all about the special abilities of their camper, their likes and their dislikes, just like any other child would have. And they get to learn how they're going to help facilitate that child having an exceptional week at camp. So the week of camp for those caregivers does not become about them. It becomes about them being focused on this individual child who has specific sleeping needs, specific eating needs, specific physical needs or limitations, or how they're going to move about the camp and participate in all their events. And that care team makes sure that that camper is able to fully participate in whatever it is that they choose and want to participate in. So the talent show becomes about that care team supporting that child and saying, hey, what would you like to do for the talent show? And it can be moved to a favorite song of theirs. I think we must have heard Taylor Swift Shake It Off 10 times at the talent show last year. It can be a newcomer to camp last year. It was a sweet little 7-year-old girl with who did ballet.
Really?
She put on a pretty pink tutu and a leotard, and she, in her mind, she wants to dance like these ballerinas, and she went up there and she did a beautiful little ballet. I mean, the kids write poetry, they do art, they imitate animals, they do all kinds of wonderful creative things, and we never know what we're in for. There's one young man who has written a series of how to treat, how a gentleman should treat a young lady on a date. And he has created his own set of rules and guidelines for this, and they're quite popular. And it's pure stand-up comedy, I have to tell you, and it's just priceless. And so sometimes what we see up there is just remarkable when it comes to the talent show. Yeah.
He's how old?
I think I brought him here on the show one year, and he was 17 at the time.
My gosh.
Yeah, and a remarkable young man. So. He's getting to the point where he's soon going to age out of Camp Emu,
Yeah.
but he's, it's been with him. People start coming into Camp Emu around 7 years old. They start aging out around between 16 and 18, depending, and on camp that year. So like I said, it's 40 years of rich tradition. What we've evolved over the time, although we haven't changed really the infrastructure of what the purpose of camp is, what has evolved is the leadership training. It's interesting that we're talking here with mediation services about training and how we're teaching individuals those listening skills, those compassion skills, those non-judgmental skills, those abilities to support people and who they are and where they are in their current life. And those are the same leadership skills that we pass on to our teams of caregivers and volunteers that come up to camp. They come up early so that there's some time set aside for them to receive the proper training. It's not training them about what it is to care for a child with autism, what it is to care for a child who has Down syndrome, what it is to be with a child who is deaf or blind or has a particular physical disability. The training is how we listen to the children, how we make them feel important, how we make them feel that their needs come before our needs, how we make them, how they can support the child in being able to make their own decisions. So often for our children, they're not given those opportunities. And so Camp Imua is about training our caregivers to fully support that individual child so they can 100% enjoy that camp experience just like any other child wants to enjoy camp.
No wonder they want to come back year after year.
They do. And it's life-changing, not only for those campers, of course, but for those caregivers.
Caregivers, yeah.
Many of our caregivers who come up and volunteer for Camp Imua are really the recruiters of caregivers for year after year, because they go back and they tell their friends and peers, this changed my life. This was an amazing experience. They come up oftentimes teenagers, high school students, and college students. And you know, at that age, we're very self-focused as individuals. Everything is about me and how the world affects me. But when you come to Camp Imua and you are suddenly the caretaker, the responsible person for this beautiful child who has these very special abilities, that week has to become about them. And when people learn how to put themselves aside and see life through the eyes of another individual with their special needs and their limitations or their special abilities, it changes who you are inside. It can't not do that. Many children have come away from Camp Imua, or many young people who have volunteered at Camp Imua leave that experience, have taken college courses and moved on in their careers to then become people that work with individuals who have special needs, because it has changed the course of their life and how they see the world.
Interesting. We have to take a short break. We'll be right back with Dean Wong of Imua Family Services.
Aloha from Pacific Source, and thank you for your support over the years. Pacific Source has offered more of what builders and homeowners value most in building materials and cabinet design. We've done this by offering superior customer service and products, as well as by designing kitchens and baths that are intelligent and elegant while staying true to your vision and budget. Visit our showroom in Waikapu in central Maui, where we display a variety of cabinets as well as top-name appliances like Sub-Zero, Wolf, Viking, KitchenAid, and more. We display countertops, tile and wood flooring, and several brands of windows and doors, including Fleetwood multi-slides and La Cantina folding doors. Come in and talk to our designers about making your dreams become a reality. From concept to completion, we really believe our attention to detail and superior service are what sets us apart. Let us show you what we mean. We are a Pacific Source at 515 East Oahe Way in the Consolidated Base Yard in Waikapu, just off Waiko Road. Call us at 986-0380. That's 986-0380, or look us up online at packsource.com.
And we are back. This is Maui Nonprofit Notes, the show that each week talks to executive directors of nonprofit agencies about what they are doing to help the folks in need in our community. I guess we could say camp is not a need; it's a want.
It's a want.
But it is a
yeah.
need
It is,
in a
it's
way.
both.
Yeah,
I'll
I
tell
guess
you
it
where
is.
the need comes in. I'll tell you from two sides. I'll tell you from the camper experience, and I'll tell you from the parent experience.
Okay.
One of the things that Camp Imua does, it's sort of, you don't realize it's happening unless you're a parent of a child with special needs, is it gives that family respite.
Mm-hmm. Ah, okay.
And if you are the caregiver, the parent, or caregiver of a child with special needs, you know that is 24/7. It's relentless. You may have a child that cannot be left alone for any period of time, or left on their own, or can play on their own or be left to manage themselves on their own, eat on their own, sleep on their own, things that we take for granted with typically developing children. They may not even be able to stay in the company of their own siblings by themselves, or babysitters, without having specially trained and qualified people. And so you have families that are under enormous stress of management and care for that child, and sometimes additional financial stress as well. And so the opportunity for them to take their child to Camp Imua and know that they're leaving them in a safe, grounded, loving, caring, nurturing environment with people who specialize in children with special needs, and that they can go on for that week and have that week of respite. Some families just go and they sleep for the week. Some families go and rekindle their relationships that have been put on hold for the time that they're caring for their child. Sometimes it's about restoring relationships with the other children and siblings in the family. And sometimes it's just much needed downtime. And that's really where the need for Camp Imua, if I was to define a need,
Right.
is really huge.
Okay.
Yeah.
That you've made a strong case for that. So
Yes.
I correct my statement. It is a need.
Yeah,
But
and
it's
the fact
also
that
a
the
want.
children, the fact that the children want to come back year after year or want to go to camp is also very helpful to that family, because they're not offloading that child. They're not sending them someplace they don't want to go.
Right.
They know that the child is happy, enthusiastic, and can't wait for Camp Imua to come back year after year. So that's very important.
Right. Now, do they have to have been a client of Imua Family Services to get into camp?
No, not at all. Although many children have been clients, because if they have special needs from early on diagnosis, we might have known them from their early childhood. Some people do go through our infant child development program. Maybe they've been with us in their birth to 3 time. They move on to our early childhood development program, and they may still be enrolled in programs that we have, like Imua Autism Services, and then go into Camp Imua. We definitely do see that. But there are children who come to this island, who move to this island with their families, who have special needs, and maybe Camp Imua is the first time they have an experience with Imua Family Services. So that also happens a lot for us as well.
Oh, I see. Okay. But once they've been there, the chances are very great that they'll want to continue until they age out, if you will.
Absolutely. If it works out for the family. And, I have to say, since we're here to talk about the fact that registration is open for campers and for volunteers, that the spaces at Camp Imua are limited, and they go very quickly. And so we have to organize camp and choose the registrants based on needs, physical needs, the abilities of our caregivers, who our teams are, etc. So while we try and have somewhere between 50 and 60 campers, for those who want to participate in Camp Imua who have special needs children, you have to register for camp earlier rather than later. If you leave it till May or June, there's a good chance that opportunity won't exist for you.
So is it an application process, or is it?
It's a registration
Correct.
process.
Okay. I mean, so some who register or apply may not get to go.
If we fill up camp, the 60 spaces that we
Okay.
have for camp, then there's a chance that they'll be put on a wait list. And only if someone cancels, then
Okay.
can we open up that wait list. And I want people to understand the wait list and the limitation for how many children we can have has nothing to do with our wanting to accept more children. It has to do with the limited bed space
At the camp.
at Camp Molahia, right?
Right.
So Camp
And
Imua-
historically,
yeah.
sorry, Dean, and
Go ahead,
historically
Linda.
for the past couple of years, we've been able to accommodate a lot of these campers. So there isn't this this amount that we're not there aren't a list or a group of kids that we
Right.
deny from coming. I think when it comes to a lot of the selection process, Dean's referring to the volunteers.
Okay.
We get an amazing group of high school students and beyond. We have volunteers that aren't in high school either. But being able to feed through that, being able to kind of gauge their commitment levels. And like Dean said, these high schoolers are for the first time being faced with having to care for someone else that isn't themselves. So it's kind of a cool leadership process that's happened, that's organically happened, and something that I think Imua is kind of really building on in years to come for camp.
Do a lot of the volunteers come back every year?
Yes,
Absolutely.
repeatedly.
It's-
Even after high school, they'll come back while they're in college.
Okay.
And I think this is the missed, from being able to observe it for the last 2 years, this is kind of, I kind of call it aha moment often is the relationship that happens between these typically developing high school students who oftentimes can be selfish, although I do think we get an exceptional amount of volunteers or an exceptional case of volunteers for Camp Imua. But to see them be able to interact with a lot of these peers that they would otherwise not have interacted with, and be able to develop relationships that carry far beyond camp or that week, to me is kind of the most magical part of camp. The helicopters are cool, the horseback rides are awesome, but that relationship is really powerful.
Right.
Yeah.
And who are we listening to? Marina?
This is Marina.
Howdy.
The ever wonderful Marina.
Oh, you're so nice, Susie.
The social media whiz.
Guru.
I don't know if it's Wiz, but yes, I get to tweet all day. Woo!
Yeah. She's involved.
And I get to fill in pukas anywhere. So at camp, I'm definitely the wallflower. And I feel like I get a really cool glimpse into what happens during that week without having to sleep there every night.
Wallflower. She's observing.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, lots of observing.
Wonderful. So I guess what I was getting at was, is there a criteria for what kind of abilities a person has to have to get in, or
To be a caregiver or to be a camper?
Camper.
No.
Oh, no.
So we don't decide. We don't just discern or choose based on children's abilities or what their special needs are. Really, what makes
Correct.
camp powerful is when it's diverse.
Okay.
And the diversification is huge. We also don't focus on the child's particular special needs when we're at camp.
I think it would be like strictly bed spaces is really the only limitation, to be honest.
Right, and balancing number of boys and girls.
Right.
That
Oh,
has
correct.
because that's part of the bed space issue,
Right.
because we have a certain part of the camp that
It's
is
devoted to
girls
each,
and you know what I mean, and boys, and we want to have the balance of caregivers and teams and things like that, and we want to have equal numbers of the younger children and middle and older children as well for that balance as well.
Right.
So it's a little juggling game.
When parents are dropping off their child for the first time at camp, I mean, there's got to be some anxiety on their part, because this is the first time they've been away and not with other family members or close friends.
It's huge, yeah. The anxiety is huge. You can see on their faces, they're like, should we stay? Should we go? Do you want us to check back
We're
tomorrow?
not sure if it's exhaustion or if it's anxiety, but there are some
Yeah.
concerns.
And then at the end of the week, they're like, she didn't call me once. They didn't talk to me once. No one called. Like, and when they realize their child is quite happy to be settled in, sometimes they get there, they're nervous and everything, and then suddenly the child is gone. They're off with their care team, or they're looking at horses and and their parents are like,
Like
I guess
the
we can
first
leave.
day of kindergarten, the kid jumps out of the car and runs into school, and the mom's sitting there going, wait, you're supposed to cry, or you're supposed to say, I don't want to go, or something.
And Susie, I think we've been able to build like a historic relationship with a lot of these kids. So a lot of them are returning, and so it's not like they're walking necessarily into a new situation every year.
Right. It's not 60 new
it's
kids.
Great. Correct.
Yeah, they see friends that they've had from before, and that's really important to rekindle those relationships.
And I would think many of them want to go back because they know their friend's going to be there. Maybe it's the only time they get to see them from a different part of the island or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, and these campers are the center of this camp. They are definitely, I would hope, feel and know that everyone is there for them and cheering for them and really just supporting them. So I think it's kind of...
Yeah. When you have a child who is
harmonious.
paraplegic, as an example, and they are quadriplegic and they're in a wheelchair and they're being moved around camp, and there's something that they want to do, without even hesitation, there will suddenly be 10 people there to make sure that facilitation of that child's needs happen, and that they get to experience the opportunity. If they want to sit on the horse, if they want to get in the helicopter, whatever they want to do, it just becomes it's like a community operation to make sure that this happens for every child that's there. One of my favorite stories about talking to a camper who started camp when she was 7 years old and went through till she was about 16 years old, and she was at King Kekaliki High School. And I talked to her and said to her, what is your favorite thing about Camp Imua? And she could have said anything: the horseback riding, the swimming, the helicopter rides, the experience in the ocean. And she said, when I go to school at my high school, she goes, and I go in the cafeteria to eat lunch, no one wants to sit with me. And she said, but when I go to Camp Imua and I go in the cafeteria for lunch, everyone wants to sit with me and be my friends, And that single thing is more important to her, those relationships and having peers that are in her age group that want to sit and be with her and think that she is special. That's the most important thing, and that's the most important thing for any 16-year-old girl.
Right. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
it speaks a lot
Powerful.
to how we have to encourage our society and our young people to be more inclusive of everyone.
Right.
You know, and that's really the model that we live in at Camp Imua. It gets to be very, it creates this perfect world up there for
Sense
that
of
week.
inclusion.
Yeah, that everyone is included, that everyone is special, that everyone
Regardless.
has abilities, that everyone has special abilities, you know.
Right.
And how much more similar we are, I think, to each other than we think. And to follow up on the registration process, it is open to the public. So imuafamilyservices.org/camp, and anyone can register, anyone can sign up, both volunteer and camper.
And this is totally
Registration's
free
open.
Absolutely.
Correct. Yes.
to the families.
Yes.
There's no cost involved thanks
Right.
to the donations
The
and the generosity of the community.
amazing sponsors.
One of the things that I was looking at on your website, you talked about the in-kind donations, like the services or providing food or something for the campers that a lot of companies prefer to do. And that's a wide open territory.
Absolutely. I mean, we have, we're feeding 300 plus people, 350 people a day for the entire week of camp. And there are meals coming in from hotels, from restaurants, from chefs on the
Westin
island.
does it.
Yeah, it's
Chef
huge.
Camden strikes that up and is kind of scheduling all that throughout the whole week. So Chef Camden with Pono Pies has been really pivotal over the past couple of years,
Yeah.
the years that I've been involved. The Westin lends a lunch when we're at Oluwalu.
Ritz at Kapalua.
The Ritz at Kapalua. We don't mean to leave anybody out, but it's a
Yeah.
cool
And a lot of the farmers on the island will send
collaboration.
produce,
Yep.
vegetables, produce, all of that helps.
Costco lens.
Right. So while money's appreciated, this is also appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely.
And anything anybody can do to help to make sure this stays free. I mean, that's the beauty of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the volunteers are that they get
Correct.
nothing
Correct.
except the experience.
Satisfaction.
Well, and now we have, because we do a leadership program and training as part of it, we do give certificates in volunteer hours and leadership training and things like that, so that we're documenting the hours of volunteerism, which helps them with their college applications and things
a lot
like
of
that.
Rotaries look at them.
Right.
We also, again, we have an exceptional volunteer base.
Okay, one more time before we have to leave. The phone number for Imua for camp.
Is 244-7467, and they can
Website?
register. Go to the imuafamilyservices.org website and just click on Camp Imua, and their links will take you through all of the information and registration process. It's all electronic.
Cool. Maybe this year.
Maybe
Yes!
this year, the 40th anniversary.
Susie, I'm putting it down in my notes. This is the party that you want to come to.
I can't do all my bucket list stuff this year. You know what that leads to. Whoa.
That's too funny.
Anyway, thank you so very much, and have a super successful, and I know we'll talk about it again as we lead into it, because you have several events that lead into the camp.
Yes, we do.
So thanks a lot, Dean and Marina.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maui Nonprofit Notes is sponsored as a community service by Pacific Source, the builder's choice. Give Paul and his staff a call at 986-0380 or stop by their showroom in the Waikapu Base Yard on East Oahe Way to see how they can help you with your building project. Maui Nonprofit Directors Association's mission is to provide personal and professional support for nonprofit executive directors, their organizational support to to their organization and to the community of Maui. I'm reading double lines here. Please visit our website at mauinonprofit.org for a list of our memberships. Today we visited with Maui Mediation Services and Imua Family Services and got an update on what's happening at those agencies. Mahalo for tuning in. Don't forget to join us again next week, right here, same time, same place, when we'll feature representatives of 2 other member agencies. Until then, I'm Susie Tiemann, Executive Director of Lokahi Pacific and a host for Maui Nonprofit Notes. Thanks for joining us today. Have a great weekend. Have a great week. Aloha.